Good evening, everybody, or afternoon, I should say. It's afternoon here, and welcome to Jeopardy Live Panel.
Hi.
Hi, Rachel.
How are you guys?
Perfect.
I'm Andy Saunders, and we've just gone live. So thanks for tuning in. We've got our full panel here, and so once again, I am Andy Saunders, and let's introduce everyone. First up, we've got the founder and chief editor of the JeopardyFan.com, Jeanie Kenkel. Thanks for being able to join us this afternoon. Also, we have a large panel returning to our panel. We have Josh Frumkin. Thanks for joining us once again, Josh. We also have Kristen Sauceville, Jason Keller,
hello,
Vaughn Winchell on the left. He's also got newcomer Megan Rafferty Barnes on the right. And also we have Rachel Pepe. Did I pronounce that correctly?
No, it's Pepe.
Pepe, I'm sorry. I'll get that correct. Okay, Rachel Pepe, who was on this past week. So I've got lots of questions for everyone. So thank you all for joining us. Also, thanks for tuning in. Once again, we're going to open with the This Week in Jeopardy History segment. I've got a few things. First up, Julia Collins. Her run continued 1 year ago. I believe by the end of this week she was somewhere around 8 or so games, and so on her way to 20 victories. 3 years ago, 2012, the teen tournament that year began. Week 2 was filmed at DAR Constitution Hall, and which meant all the teen tournament contestants got to meet Michelle Obama. If you look back through the Jeopardy fan archives, you'll see me complaining that every single contestant wanted to talk about Michelle Obama's arugula. 5 years ago, Buddy Wright, his run of wins began. It actually bookended that year's Tournament of Champions, so he became the first one in the following tournament. Gene Sway, 6 years ago, ended Liz Murphy's run at 5 games. A little bit of controversy 7 years ago, 2008. May 1st was, I guess you could call it the Paul Thomas incident. He got extra time to write his final Jeopardy answer because of his issues with the light pen. And because he received the extra time, both him and Tom Morris were brought back the next day as co-champions in spite of them not being tied. So that was a bit of Jeopardy history 7 years ago. Andrew Roston's run began 8 years ago. 10 years ago in the Ultimate Tournament of Champions, Grace Veach pulled off an upset on April 29th against Brian Weekle, who was seeded into the second round of that event. April 30th, if you've been following the Jeopardy community a very long time, you'll know that you'll know the name Ronnie O'Rourke, also known as TDC Iago. Her win as a contestant came on the 30th of April, 13 years ago, so a happy Jeopardiversary coming up to her. And 16 years ago, Michael Rooney, I guess you could say he's the spiritual ancestor to Keith Williams and the Final Wager. He was the original chief of the betting police back when the Jeopardy boards were still the Sony boards, and his run to 5 wins began on April 28th, 16 years ago. So let's get on to talking about Jeopardy before I move on to anything else. First up, Celebrity Jeopardy's coming back.
Mm-hmm.
So the celebrity contestants were revealed this week, and I know that most diehards roll their eyes at these celebrity shows. I'm just going to bring up the list of.
Oh, cool.
There's the list of the Celebrity Jeopardy contestants in case you haven't had a chance to see them, but there are 15. They were revealed this past week. Now, to the panel, is there anybody who you guys are actually looking forward to see compete on Jeopardy?
I'm a big wait fan, so I think it'll be fun to see Mo Rocca.
I agree.
He does trivia stuff, comedy-wise. So.
Also, yeah, with Mo Rocca, also, although he predated, or actually post-dated also that he did the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee I'm also, just because I'm a big Will and Grace fan, I'm just curious to see how Deborah Messing does.
I'm excited to see my doppelganger. Apparently, someone on Twitter said I looked like Bellamy Young when I was on Wheel of Fortune. And the 5-day champion I beat on my first day of Jeopardy, Tom Kunzen, looks just like Zachary Quinto. So he's going to be there.
I'm kind of curious to see how Aaron Rodgers does. I'm not really a Packers fan, but I always think it's kind of brave when, the pro sports player goes on something like this.
Yeah, he's probably really. I think he's pretty smart. He went to Berkeley.
Yeah.
I think I've heard he's a Jeopardy fan, that he watches Jeopardy. I read that somewhere.
Cool.
Yeah.
I want to see Penn Jillette more than anybody. I watched him on Celebrity Apprentice, and he was great, so I want to see how he does.
So, yeah, the Celebrity Jeopardy is coming up the week of May the 11th. Now, Rachel, I have a few questions for you because, of course, you're the only one to provide some insight as to this upcoming, or this past week, I should say. How happy were you not to have to compete against Alex Jacob?
I mean, I'm pretty relieved. It was sort of like the ultimate buzzkill when you got in the morning and he's revealed to be the 6-time champion who's won $150,000. It's like you automatically are like, oh, okay. So, and I was surprised that he lost that game. That was an interesting Final Jeopardy to lose on. I think it was the only one all week that I was positive I knew the answer to. So I think it's always surprising when the people who are such great players, the question that trips them up, it proves they're human too. It can happen at any day. So he was great. It was fun to watch him play.
Now, did you actually hear he just won 6 games out of him, or did he give some outrageous number? Because I know on last week's panel, he had joked that he had won a whole bunch before he came on.
No, it was the so we were all in, you're in the green room in the morning, and they just reveal who the person among you, is the returning champion. And so that's how he was. They introduced, one of the contestant people introduced him that's Alex is the champion, and Alex had told him how much you've won, and it was something like he'd won around $150,000 at that point.
Okay, so he decided he wasn't going to keep the joke going. Now, obviously you went through buzzer rehearsals, right?
Yes.
So, other than Alex, who I presume was probably very fearsome on the buzzer, who else were you afraid of on the buzzer? Do you recall much of that, or?
I really don't remember. I have a feeling that when they do the buzzer rehearsals, Michael, who I ended up playing with, I think knew a lot. I really, that was kind of a blur. But I think they also do it. They sort of ask, I think at one point they want people on each buzzer to be able to buzz in, because they're doing it not just so that you get comfortable with it, but so that they can test and make sure that everything is operating correctly. But the buzzers, it's the hardest part of the game, as anybody who's on this panel could probably attest to.
Yeah, yes, I'm pretty sure the entire panel can attest to that one. Now, with regards to your Final Jeopardy, I know Alex was like, you had to go north, young man, go north for this one. Before he revealed everyone's responses, did you actually, once he said that, did you think you'd gotten the question correct?
No, I was so dumbfounded by the Final Jeopardy question. It took me probably 10 seconds to realize what they were even asking, because I was just so like, what? And then I realized it must be a C. And then I was like, okay. And then it's like I got 5 seconds to think of what's north, and I sort of picked one. And I picked the wrong one. So I sort of felt like I had gotten it wrong. I wasn't feeling super confident at that point. So, and then as soon as the Baltic, I was like, duh, obviously. So it's the breaks.
Did you did you enjoy your experience on the show?
Oh yeah, I loved it. It was funny because I think I love it more in retrospect than at the time. I think the second it's over, I said this to people, I've never experienced an adrenaline drop like that ever. I mean, it was like it's like this peak of, you're so excited, you're on Jeopardy, it's crazy, and then it's over, and they're like, oh, do you need a cab? And it's just over. And so it took me a while to I remember I came home and I called my husband, and my mom was over, and they were like, what happened? And I sort of went through the whole thing, and I was like, I feel so awful. It's so awful. And they were like, you need to get a grip. Everything is okay. You're in Southern California. It's February. Go enjoy the rest of your day. And so that was good. And so and I don't know if you guys had the same experience. I could not watch Jeopardy for like a month and a half. I just couldn't do it. It was like just watching it, all I could think about was like replaying my game that I had lost, and then thinking about what other people, I just couldn't do it. So, but now it's telling the story again. It's actually becomes fun. It's a fun story to tell, and it was such a great experience. I mean, it's like, experience of a lifetime. And there was a woman I became friendly with that day who was on the day after me, and she had a really tough game, and so she was on Facebook. She's like, I'm so embarrassed. I don't want, and I said, it's so great. It's like, whatever, we made it to Jeopardy. So yeah, it was a great experience, and the people that worked there were just as nice as they could be, and it was, it's a trip. That's how I look at it. It would have been nice to win, right?
So can anyone else speak to that on the panel about feeling difficult watching Jeopardy after going on?
Well, yeah, actually, well, personally, a lot of times because I tutor, it's on at a time when I'm tutoring, so that makes it a little easy. But yeah, I mean, even I do find I find myself sometimes when I watch. I mean, I do try to watch, especially if people who I know are on. But yeah, I found it pretty tough to watch, and I find it pretty tough to watch anyway, just because I'm a lot about the content, and sometimes I have issues with the content, if that's not always apparent. So yeah, I totally get that, and I also look back on my own experience and think about what a whirlwind it was, and thinking about how when it was over, it was just kind of like, yeah, okay, this is over. And it's like, yeah, it's a although actually when at least the first time that it ended for me, I was just so tired that I was just like numb, and I couldn't believe that I had to give like another interview, and I couldn't believe that I actually managed to get through that, and I probably forgot almost everything that I said. But yeah, I also even go over like, what could have gone differently in various games.
I'm on my Jeopardy panel.
Hi, whoever that is.
Oh, sorry, my husband just walked in the door. Sorry.
I totally agree. I mean, I think there's something to like the, seeing how the sausage is made, sort of thing, which happens. And then there's a lot of, I mean, I was leading and I lost on a tough Final Jeopardy, at least what I, of course, think was tough. And so watching it, if there's like an easy Final Jeopardy, every time it's like, why couldn't have that been the one that I had, and I would have won, and I would have kept going. So, who knows? Yeah.
There was a Final Jeopardy this week where the answer was my maiden name. And so why was I not in this game? Why couldn't this have been, the game that ended up, why couldn't they have swapped that final with the one where I ended up going out?
It was never, yeah. I mean, the one thing, I never had that about final. I had that about, like, categories in the game proper.
Rock drummers.
Yes, exactly.
Speaking of Celebrity Jeopardy, I remember when Kurt Schilling was on the show, he only answered questions about food, and there was one where the answer was Schilling that he got right.
Now, at this point, I'm just going to read off some comments we've had so far from people tweeting in at us on hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel. First off, I don't know if you want to see along the bottom, but these squares, if in the rectangle, you can see that Vaughn and Megan fit in quite nicely, but if you just look along the bottom and they're the square instead of the rectangle, according to Steve Bonneman, Megan and Vaughn's thumbnail looks like an interesting piece of modern art. Neither's face is visible.
It's minimalist.
Yeah.
A couple of thoughts on the Celebrity Jeopardy from Steve Bonneman. Nobody for Penn Jillette. He's going to own. I think Jeanie eventually touched on that. Yeah, I was about to say Jeanie touched on it. Jeanie touched on that after Steve's tweet. Yeah.
Okay.
And also from at Mike_Noya. Did you guys think Shaquille O'Neal should have been accepted on Celebrity Jeopardy? And I am going to say no, I don't.
No.
I think I feel as though Shaq would be in. It's tough for Shaq to be in over his head, considering how tall he is. But I suspect he might be when it comes to Jeopardy.
Do those boxes go high enough for the other contestants?
Yeah, you know what?
Right.
They do.
Have you seen? But on the flip side, have you seen Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's Celebrity Jeopardy?
Yeah. He's really smart.
I was thinking about that.
Like, hey, if he wants to go on, I mean, more power to him. I don't. Like
Shaq would be good TV.
Yeah.
At the least.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder. I know Sony's emails came out, and there was some discussion about sports Celebrity Jeopardy, but I wonder if Shaq might be better for the sports Celebrity Jeopardy, if there was one.
I have this moment that I remember. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeannie. Sorry. I have this moment that I remember, and I remember when it was, but Warren Moon, former quarterback of the Houston Oilers, on Wheel of Fortune, when they had like Celebrity Wheel of Fortune once, and him being shocked when he tried to say "oh," and they told him he had to buy a vowel, and this has like never left my head, and he was like surprised that "oh" was a vowel somehow. And, like that is quite, colored quite a bit my view on.
Well, speaking of professional footballers and Wheel of Fortune, I'm sure many game show fanatics still cringe when they hear the name of former Chargers place kicker Rolf Benirschke. So, okay. I think at this point, over the last few weeks, I have been talking about various craft beers. Before the show today, I was drinking this one. It's Dead Elephant IPA from Railway City Brewing Company, and that's in St. Thomas, Ontario. St. Thomas, known as the Railway City, because there were a lot of railways in the area in the late 19th century, because the North Shore of Lake Erie was a very convenient shortcut between Chicago and New York, cut off a little bit of a time going between the two large cities. And of course, Dead Elephant Ale, named after Jumbo the Elephant, the prized attraction of P.T. Barnum's circus, who was killed in a railway accident in St. Thomas in the late 1800s. So St. Thomas has kind of claimed both railways and being the spot where Jumbo the Elephant died. So that, if that ever comes up, that is a fun and interesting factoid. In terms of other contestants from this week, I don't know if I'm the only one who felt this, but to me, Alex Schraff, he came across on camera as somebody I'd want to cheer against. I think Rachel can probably speak best to this. What was he like in person?
Alex was on, just remind me what show, he was on Wednesday.
He was on Wednesday, yes.
Yeah, he was the guy that, he winked. Was he the one that winked at his, when he was introduced?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you more about him. I like vaguely.
Like
I interacted the most with. I actually talked to most Michael, who was on my show, and then Ashley, who was on the show after mine, and then the college professor who was on Friday, who played really well. and then whose name I can't quite remember, I can't place right now. And then a lot of other people just kind of kept to themselves, so I did not get a chance to talk with him that much.
The Wednesday episode was the one that I caught, and quite honestly, I wasn't like jazzed about any. I thought Ashley was sweet enough, but I wasn't jazzed about any of the contestants. I wouldn't say that I was necessarily actively rooting against anyone, but and like I said, I don't know. It just seemed like a very meh episode to me. And I mentioned this before we went on air, but it just seemed like a very meh episode to me.
Are you guys all aware of the controversy over Michael's Boston accent that has?
Yeah.
Yeah. What can you dish about that, Rachel?
It seemed very real to me. Although I remember being when he said Kaz, I do remember being like, what? Like,
you turn that up a little bit.
That strong. I think you're turning it on a little bit for television, but I mean, he was a very nice guy, so far be it for me. He played really well. He was, but I thought it was pretty funny that it got some traction.
Okay. Another comment going back to the Celebrity Jeopardy and the whole Shaq thing from, once again, Steve Bonneman. The big Aristotle can't be that much worse than Wolf Blitzer and has nothing to lose.
I mean, I was going to say, I mean, there have been I mean, what's the worst that could happen? There have been various instances, not that I've, I mean, I remember watching some Celebrity Jeopardies where there were some pretty just, like, I hate to use the phrase again, but mad games as far as, I can remember, like, I think Eartha Kitt was on once, and it was just like, I was just like, is she, like, there? like is she, like, kind of present? I mean, so I don't see really, actually, I was saying, I mean, does anyone on the panel have any, like, celebrities that they would really like to see on Celebrity Jeopardy who have not been? Or I don't know if that's... I'm sorry if I'm derailing things, but...
No.
Go ahead, Jeanie.
No, I just think I'd have to give it some thought. I didn't think you were derailing anything.
Yeah.
But I will think about it now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I am never indifferent, I think, to Celebrity Jeopardy. A lot of the times, I agree. A lot of the times, it's really not very good Jeopardy at all. But occasionally, you'll get a celebrity who's known for something completely different from a general knowledge quiz game who plays great, like Michael McKeon. And that I always find really exciting.
Yeah, he's great.
If you just watch it long enough, it'll happen again.
Yeah. I think pretty people always want to be complimented on their intelligence and intelligent people on how pretty they are. So it's like, there's not really a downside for the celebrities to go on. Either, they'll surprise people about how smart they are that they didn't know before, or, it'll do nothing and they go back to their day jobs and it doesn't matter. So
yeah, isn't Cheech Marin like the best Celebrity Jeopardy player of all time?
Yeah, Cheech has always been pretty good with Celebrity Jeopardy.
Which is odd.
Andy Richter said the top one-day scores, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But granted, Wolf Blitzer was one of his opponents.
It's a GW alum. GW alum, Wolf Blitzer. Come on.
So my next question, I'm going to open this up to the entire panel. Between, Michael Bilo, Kei Chua, Alex Jacob, Todd Lovell, and now, of course, Greg Soroka, we've seen a lot of very, very, very large daily double bets recently. Like, along the lines of true daily doubles, late and double Jeopardy, or over $10,000 bet. Do we think that we've turned a corner and this trend will continue and more people will bet lots of money, or do you think it'll swing back to normal?
I think it'll swing back to normal. I think that people, I think it's kind of just a coincidence that you've had like kind of a cluster of people who do that. But I remember when Arthur Chu was on and people were saying, oh, this is going to change the game forever. Everybody's going to play like him now. And no, they didn't. I think that people just do whatever is most comfortable for them when they're on stage under the lights.
I tend to agree with Kristen. Sorry, Jason. I tend to agree with Kristen. I think it may be a little while before it swings back, as long as people in the studio that day are watching other people bet big. I think it'll take a while for that to be extinguished. I also wonder if I'm not the only champion from this season who's watching and thinking, wow, I may have to play differently if I go back to the Tournament of Champions from the way I played when I played. But I would be surprised if it would swing back in season 32.
Yeah, I don't want to think about having to mix stuff up or whatever.
Honestly, you know what? I definitely agree, and this is something that even if I had to go back, even hopefully I'll get to go back on again, but at some point. But at least I know it's just not my. I had actually, I don't think that people realize that I did have an idea of what I was doing going to the daily doubles. I didn't want to press myself too much. I didn't want to say to myself and just add this extra pressure of, oh, I'm wagering everything. Because I think it would have affected how I answered the questions. So I was trying to just stay within my comfort zone and maintain a comfortable lead, because most of the time that I had daily doubles, or they were either in the middle of the game, or they were really early on when it wasn't that consequential. I know that there are a lot of people who are probably watching the shows and thinking that's how I should do it if I get on. I don't necessarily think that if you have the confidence and you have the knowledge, I think it might be a good tactic. But even sometimes, you get overconfident. So, I think that it's something. One thing I don't know. It doesn't. I understand that if that's the way that they're playing, that's the way that they're playing. But I feel like it also, and I understand that it's like the whole, like that it's a part of the game. But I think that sometimes it just kind of brushes everything else off to the side. And as someone who grew up with the game and appreciated it for the content, that these big daily double wagers kind of get in the way of that. And so I know that that's probably something that not everyone agrees with. But personally, I like it. I like it when I see a display of breadth of knowledge, and if it so happens that someone happens to hit a big wager, that kind of adds to it. But if it's just about the wagering, then eh.
Yeah, I mean, it makes more sense. The big wagers when you're behind, but when people are already up and then they're just piling on, it's I guess it's exciting for a second, but I always prefer the games where it's close towards the end. I mean, you tend to
that's
tune
another
out,
thing.
I think.
That's another thing that I think that unless there's really something going on there where you have a clearly better player, probably shouldn't. Probably just who gets the daily double should not. It almost makes it a little bit more of a luck game.
Yeah, I noticed like in my games, the daily doubles kept on coming up in categories that I wasn't entirely comfortable with. I think
that too.
Only one time was it a category that I considered a wheelhouse. I bet everything, and then I got it wrong. So that really did. Especially when it was categories where either I knew I didn't know the subject that well, or it was kind of opaque as to what the exact clue might be. And I noticed like a lot of the people that I played against were making big daily double bets. They were making the kinds of bets that they needed to catch up, and then they got them wrong. There was just like no luck with daily doubles for anybody in any of my games.
I think it's very entertaining when somebody else sets high on daily double, but like personally when I was up there I was just terrified. I was probably betting a little bit more than I would have if I hadn't been a regular on the J board, just because I was like, oh, they're gonna all make fun of me if I don't at least like try to get to first place. The thing I really hate, of course, is when it's like the last clue on the board, someone gets it and they have the possibility of getting into first place, and they bet like $1,000, and then Final Jeopardy comes, they wager everything when it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
I have to say it's kind of unnerving standing there when somebody else is making a big daily double bet, like when one of your opponents is. And thankfully that it didn't really end up working out for my opponents when they did it. But it was really unnerving standing there for, 5-10 seconds, whatever it was, waiting to see if they were going to be able to pass you or not.
In the first game I played, I almost missed the entire next clue after the defending champion missed a big daily double. Because I was in the lead and he lost money, and I was so relieved he'd lost money that the next clue, I swear what I heard was wah, 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 German. But the only two words you need in that clue are German astronomer.
Oh.
I was wondering. I was looking at like the Final Jeopardy stats. Jason was talking about breadth of knowledge and stuff. So Alex got, out of the 6 or 7 or whatever Final Jeopardies he had like 1 right, 2 right,
Two.
And so I wonder. I mean, he didn't need to get it right in a lot of them, and I don't want to. I mean, dude, the guy won 6 games or whatever. But like, I don't know.
I was wondering how much of that was that he didn't want to. How we were talking about him joking about. How many games he had won. I wonder how much of that is a little bit about that, and how much of it is a little bit about, is actual like what he didn't know.
He did not give away any of his personal knowledge if he didn't have to. He stopped in when he had lot games. He didn't answer final if he had a lot game. So I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's not my style. It worked for him, but I was actually, I was frustrated. I had many reasons to be frustrated. But one thing, kind of thinking back on my TOC, one thing that I did not appreciate was that neither of my opponents actually played the full game. Because Keith didn't need to play Final Jeopardy, and I thought that was really, mad. But Paul had put down his buzzer, and I was just like, you know what, it just sucks. It just sucks. I think it's a little. I mean, in the case, it's just like, I feel like it's a little unsporting. I don't know. It's just not the way that I would play the game. I had a couple of lock situations, and also I figured, what, if I'm in a lock situation, well, I've got house money to play with. Let me go for a little bit. I was never super aggressive, but like, let me see if I can make a little bit more on this. The game's not over until Alex comes and shakes your hand.
Sure. Now, one thing I was actually going to get to, and I think Jason touched on this a little bit, but I mean, obviously there's more volatility with betting big on the daily doubles, and I think that in itself might make it less viable as a long-term strategy if your goal is to, say, go on a Julia Collins type run, where you win 20 and, which of course the average 20 game is about $400,000 to $500,000. So if you're looking to take the show for that much, then maybe that while the big bets might be the best option in the short term, eventually, a bunch of 90%, 95%ers multiplied together, you're eventually going to, chances are, probability says you're going to miss one. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it didn't. I mean, maybe people would remember this better. Obviously, in the Battle of the Decades, Roger was, he had that one that he missed, and that would have been, he had a tough go of it anyway. But I think, I mean, in the tournament, this past Tournament of Champions, I mean, even Arthur had a couple of big bets, including, I think, that first Final Jeopardy, where if he had maybe been a little bit more conservative, he might have had a better shot of being in there at the end.
Well, yeah, it is high risk, and like I said, I think it's a confidence thing, and honestly, just sometimes you don't know, even when you think that you have encyclopedic knowledge of a category, sometimes it's just that one thing that it's like you kind of forgot about, or it's just one thing, stupid mistakes come into play. I I think you have to know a lot about a lot to really go on a long run. And also there are a couple. I mean, there are a bunch of factors that come in. Even I really do wonder how I would have done if I were at my current physical shape rather than at the physical shape that I was on when I was on the show, for example. There are a lot of things that go into it.
Mm-hmm.
True. Well, and saying all that, like I don't think I would suggest. I mean, I don't know if everybody would agree, but like if you're going to the tournament champions or whatever, Kristen, Vaughn, and Alex, obviously, like I wouldn't necessarily change my. If it's the big bets that got Alex there, I wouldn't, because the last thing you want to do is be conservative and then be like, oh man, if I just played the same way that I had played, I'd be, or not be conservative. If you tend to be more conservative. So.
Okay, going back to Twitter, we've got some more comments from Steve Bonneman. Also need to get out of my system that Vaughn, Kristen, and Alex Jacob is my current hopeful finals in the Tournament of Champions.
Oh.
I don't know how I do that.
I think any of us would be happy with that. That's a minimum of $50,000.
That's true. Just being there would be awesome.
Also, I don't even know Vaughn, but I found myself rooting and keeping the camera on both him and Megan. From Steve, somehow I feel like I saw Megan on television more recently than her Wheel of Karen. And for that, I can publicly say that we have seen Megan in commercials for 500 Questions, which debuted May 20th on ABC. That's all I'm going to say about that.
You have a graphic that says Megan Barnes, professional game show contestant?
That's how my brothers describe me to their friends. They're like, yeah, my sister's a professional game show contestant. That's how I've made my money for the past 5 years.
That's hilarious.
If anything comes in the DC area, I'll try out for it. It doesn't matter what it is. I like being on TV. I like winning money.
So, question for Vaughn and Kristen. Are you looking forward to competing against Alex in the Tournament of Champions?
Competing against Alex in the Tournament of Champions would be better than not getting to compete against Alex in the Tournament of Champions. But he's formidable.
Anytime you have a phrase or a sentence where it starts with competing and ends with in the Tournament of Champions.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. I can agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, as was commented, that.
Well, I've been watching this season since I played, and I knew when I played that I was the first 5-day champion since Julia Collins. So I've been watching the rest of this season every day thinking, oh, I wonder if this is going to be somebody I end up playing against. And I have to say that as the season has gone on, I'm really getting to, thinking about the Tournament of Champions and starting to understand that phrase about it being an honor just to be nominated.
Yeah. It's starting to take on kind of like a Hunger Games feel because everybody, seems so awesome and nice, and they're gonna make us all play each other, and
Yeah, exactly.
So I've reached the point of the episode where I ask, or I open the floor up to the panel. Do you have any questions or comments for anyone else on the panel this afternoon?
I think so.
Jeanie, you usually have one. I've usually forgotten something really important, and then Jeanie asks, and then I'm like, oh yeah!
Not anything this time.
I mean, I had a couple things in my notes about the Tuesday show, just looking through my notes. So I thought that there was a question about the Wave, which I thought was particularly funny because I know Andy's a huge fan of the Wave in baseball games. But I thought it was interesting the betting. I think it was on that Tuesday game where Michael bet that extra $1 on the Daily Double,
Yeah.
and I think it really messed with Todd's math when it came to Final Jeopardy because he the bet that he made, he still would have lost by $1 if Michael hadn't gotten the Final Jeopardy right. And I think, maybe there's some strategy to that if you do like unorthodox math or like.
Before I went on, I think me and my husband decided that like something ending in 73 would be the best thing to bet in a daily double, because that would mess people, because you have to do pen and paper math, and why give anything to people who can't add and subtract. But when I was on the show, I was too scared that I would somehow mess it up. So I didn't do it.
So why 73 and not any other perfectly cromulent two-digit number? Like I did think about wagering ending in 86.
Well, no, it's gotta be an odd number, because people have trouble with the odd numbers. Like
I would say you'd have to bet something prime, but
23.
Yeah. But no, I actually asked. Well, I asked Michael on Twitter this week after that bet, and he said the only reason was because it was $1 more than second place had at that point. It wasn't intended to mess up anyone's math later on. It just was to get himself doubled by $1. And to that effect, I suspect that just Todd picked out a random number, and it just happened to be $1 short.
Mm.
But that's my own. It looked like it was a bet, intended to induce a math error, but in reality, that was purely secondary, if that. So.
Because I'm happy Michael got it, because I could not imagine being Todd and oh my God. I don't even want to think about what that would feel like.
I would say that while you're making your calculations before Final Jeopardy, people have said before that they made an error because they were coming around saying, okay, time to hurry up and stuff. You don't have to listen to them. You can keep just go as long as you want. Like, they're not gonna take the paper away from you. So work on your math until you know you got it right.
My favorite story from the last Tournament of Champions was Julia Collins's 15-minute wager in her semifinal. So that was a favorite story of mine. But, any other question? Okay, yeah. Steve's response now officially done trolling. Thanks a lot, Steve. Thanks for your contributions.
I want to say that I'm so happy that Vaughn accepted my friend request when he didn't know me. I just saw that he was on the Jeopardy board and he was going to be on the show, and he's from Colombia, so I friended him because I'm trying to, we're building a super team, a trivia team, and trying to get as many Jeopardy champions and winners from other game shows on it. So he's been coming to play with us, and it's been a really wonderful addition to the team, and his wife Celia too.
Yeah, mostly I just drive Celia to the pub trivia.
Yes. I'm working on her to get her to try for Jeopardy. She doesn't think she would do well, even though she would have passed the test, but she just took it for fun this time.
I've said before, I'm putting myself out there. No, I live like a half an hour away. I live in Germantown, so if you're ever looking for an extra person, I like winning trivia. So
if anyone wants to suggest other bars or trivia nights that we could play in the area, because they're kicking us out of the Green Turtle after this week, so we're going to be nomads for a while.
Kicking you out because you're too good, or because they're putting the show on hiatus because it's the summer?
Well, the corporation doesn't want to have it on Wednesdays anymore at the Green Turtle, so Rick Rinaldi is looking for a new place to host on Wednesday nights in the Columbia area. If anyone has any suggestions for any place that wants to host trivia on Wednesdays in the Columbia area, he's looking for a place, so we could just follow him if he can find a place.
Okay. So yes, I as a pub quiz host myself, I am familiar with that whole thing. I'm sure, Jason, you heard of that story last summer from through the grapevine, but
wait, which story?
The one from John Robertson.
Wait, which I kind of missed. Yeah.
It's okay. I'll talk about it off camera. But if you're tuning into the Guelph area, speaking of shows going on hiatus, my own Music Trivia Show is the last week of that before its summer hiatus is tonight at 9 o'clock. So if you're in the Guelph area and are looking for a fun night of music trivia, it's your last chance for a while. Come out, it's at Finn McCool's at 9 o'clock this evening. Yeah, at this point, I see no questions in my
I see a bunch of people who seem to be frozen, and I know that. I don't know if video is having if video feed is having a fun time with the NBA playoffs or what have you. Internet connections.
That happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I think mine at least is okay. I'm just going to check, just in case anyone has like decided they're going to reply to JBoard or something to say, "Oh yes, I have this question," but wouldn't be the. Okay, looks like we're good there. So at this point, I'd like to thank everyone, all of you guys, for joining our panel, and hope to have all of you back at some point. So yes, thank you very much, Jason, Jeanie,
Thank you.
Josh,
Thanks.
Kristen,
Thank you.
Rachel, Vaughn, and Megan. Best of luck on 500 Questions. Once again, it debuts May 20th on ABC. Do I have my? Yes, I do. Okay, let's see. Let's get the credits card together. Had to go to last minute change there, but we're all good. Let's see. Okay, so once again, for the JeopardyFan.com, I am Andy Saunders. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great afternoon.